everybody. This is Tracy Malone from NarcissistAbuseSupport.com. Today, I've got a great guest for you. My friend Michelle Farris is a codependency expert, and we are going to talk about codependent relationships because many victims of narcissistic abuse, once they start into their recovery journey, quickly find out that they might have had these traits as coping mechanisms, and they might identify with being a codependent because we're givers and we tend to attract takers, narcissists. So let's go listen to what Michelle has to share with us about the codependent relationship and what we do to heal our own codependency issues. And I'll see you on the other side. Hi, Michelle. I'm so glad to have you back on my screen. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Tracy. I love your channel.
Thank you. I can't wait to have our interview. We're going to be talking about codependency today. But before we do, would you mind sharing with the audience just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Michelle Farris. I'm a psychotherapist in San Jose, California. I came to this work through my own codependency recovery. I was already studying to be a therapist, but I realized, holy cow, codependency was a huge deal in my life, and it was very hard to figure out. So that kind of set me off on my path, and I've created lots of products, mainly because for me, it was so hard. It was such a rat maze that went so many different directions, and I felt like there wasn't a lot of step-by-step, here's what you need to do. I thought it was, I'm going to go fix my relationship. And really, that was missing the boat, but I didn't realize that till years later.
Well, you do amazing things with codependency, and we'll let you talk about them at the end so people can understand you've got some really helpful
Sure.
resources for them. But before we start, I think many people in this narc recovery world either get labeled, oh, you're a codependent, no wonder you're with a narcissist. It's almost like
Yeah.
a byproduct. You must be. And I'm not saying that we as a collective aren't, but what I'm saying is I'd love for you to give us a sort of like, what is codependency, and
Yeah.
really how does it sort of work with the victim pool of narcissistic abuse? Because I think
Hmm.
we're really good targets. We are,
Oh, yeah. No, for sure.
I guess. Yeah. So
For sure. So I know there's many different definitions. For me, it's a hyper focus on other people for love and a support and validation. So it creates an unhealthy dependency where we actually don't trust ourselves. So we're looking to somebody else for our answers, which is sort of the perfect setup between a person who has codependency and a narcissistic person. But it's not always that. But I do find that there's that flavor of narcissistic traits and codependency that can go together, but it can also be the alcoholic, your child, because it's anybody you can hyper focus on because you think they are either defining who you are and your worth, or that's where you're getting it. So all your emotional eggs are in that person's basket. So it can be your friend, your lover, your child, a coworker, a boss, anybody that you're obsessively seeking validation from.
makes a lot of sense. What people I see come in on my screen and they have this
Mhm.
misconception.
Yeah,
Let's pretend it's a stay-at-home mom who is financially dependent on the husband.
yeah,
Then they automatically associate that I'm a codependent because I financially needed them. It's not a
yeah,
codependency
right,
like that. I want to clarify that because people really get that mixed up. You know,
right,
being dependent on your parents for financial things does not necessarily make you a codependent, right? It makes you in
right.
need of help at the time. So let's talk about what a codependent relationship is if it's not what we just described.
So there's an over functioning, under functioning theme that runs throughout where the codependent person tends to over help, over give, try to fix and control people, places, and things because that's how they get their value. But what we end up doing is we end up attracting people and actually teaching them that they can take because we're overdoing it. And then the other person learns, well, shoot, I don't really have to do much. I have it pretty good. And so we, in some ways, I think it's kind of fascinating because we actually teach people this. And in the beginning of the relationship, it may or may not have gone that road, but that's part of what happens when we go in with, I'm going to do 150% versus, well, wait a minute, what if I did my 50% and then let the other person show up? And that's the hard part, is we don't let other people give to us or show up and be responsible for their own life because we want to do it for them.
Right, or have accountability in a relationship.
Yes.
And that's one of the
Yes.
big things is it, I know for me, when I was in my marriages where I didn't understand, but I was so afraid of losing them because of
Yeah.
the parents that, like,
Right.
that I would do 180%.
Yeah.
I'll make myself, I'll show you my worth by doing it all, right? Which then led to this resentment of, what, you don't even like pick up your plate after dinner, nothing.
Right. Right.
Became, I felt more like a slave because my giving was then over expected, and I
Yes.
more, but then it became
Yeah.
almost a requirement. Like, what do you mean you're not going to do this?
Right.
I have no responsibility. I make the money, you do it all. But I set myself
Right.
up for that, as you said.
Right. And I think that's the hard part, is that we actually have to get to that point where we realize, oh my gosh, I've actually set this pattern in motion versus I'm such a good person. I'm giving so much. What's wrong with that other person that they're so selfish? Because I mean, that's a very common thing, is we look great from the outside. We're the ones getting the well, sometimes getting the promotions, but overdoing, the one that everybody relies on. But then we end up suffering. And I love that you brought up resentment, because that is such a key in codependency. Is I'm not going to tell you I'm hurt, but man, I'm going to stuff it and I'm going to resent the heck out of you behind your back.
And what you're just describing also kind of leads into a sort of passive aggressive,
Right.
like, got that festering like resentment,
Mm-hmm.
as you said. And because in my case, a coping mechanism was I was afraid to set strong boundaries, right? Because then they
Right.
leave me. That's and that,
Yes.
and so if we end up in that, instead of going, you're taking out the garbage, I would get passive aggressive now in hindsight going, but
Right.
it's not fair. How come I have to do it all?
Right.
This sort of weird act way that it manifested in me. So I think passive aggressive has a tie into the codependent model, right?
Oh, for sure. Because if the codependent person is a people pleaser, which most of us have that tendency, and what you said about, I'm afraid they're going to be mad at me. We have such a huge story in our heads about, if we set a boundary, if we say no, oh my God, the sky is going to fall. And I did that. I did that for years until I started saying no. And then I realized, oh my God, the other person doesn't even care. They
Mhm,
literally were like, oh, okay, move on.
mhm.
I was the one that created the story of that. And so that passive aggressive uh, can be the silent treatment, can be passive aggressive comments like, of course I'm going to help you. Like, ooh, right? I'm saying I'm helping you, but my tone is, I don't want to help you. But
Mhm.
we can't stuff those feelings forever. So they are going to leak out in, sarcastic humor and indirect comments, and making the other person maybe feel guilty, or even gaslighting people. I'm not mad. I'm okay. When the other person's like, you look pretty mad.
I don't know why, but I'm like pulling a lot of my own personal crap into this one. Sorry, but my word was, I'm fine, 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 I'm fine. And I realized it became almost like the standard answer because I didn't want to say how I really felt because of the fear and wanting to make everything right, and don't speak up, just keep in line, right? So I think mine was fine, I'm fine.
Yeah, mine was, I'm okay to you, but then I will make 5 phone calls and bitch about you to someone else, because that was easier.
Yeah.
And that was hard to look at, like, wow, I'm doing a lot of gossiping and a lot of like venting to people that are really the wrong people, you know?
Is
And
is
that was,
gossiping is gossiping a sort of familiar outlet for people that are
you
being?
know, I think it is, because I mean, we don't want to label it that. Like, it took me a while to realize, holy crap, that's what I'm doing. But if the codependent person doesn't feel safe, they're going to find some avenue. And we all have girlfriends, right? We all have people we can go, hey, can I just tell you what happened?
Mhm.
And that we may think of that as support, and it is. I mean, in a sense, it's somebody needing to process something, but it can get that gossipy, I'm never going to tell the direct person that I'm angry. I'm only going to tell the other people that I'm angry.
Absolutely. That and that's the clarifying difference. As you said,
Yeah,
we all have girlfriends, we go to them, oh my God,
that's right.
happened. But it's
Right,
because you're not really telling the person that
right,
is the
right.
object of what's going on. Instead,
Yeah,
we're going behind the back to just sort of get validated, um, you know,
right.
find out, okay, someone heard me.
Yeah. And to be fair, this is really hard because the stories we have in our head are huge. So to me, the first step is to just acknowledge that, you know what, you're mad, you know, and maybe do some journaling, because to me, that's where I can safely put it, where at least I can express exactly how I feel without having to censor myself.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this codependent relationship. If we're in a relationship with, say, a narcissist, because that's my channel, um,
Right.
and we're a codependent, how do we heal this relationship? Is it something that's healable? And the factor of a narcissist in there is sort of, not really,
Right.
but you know what I meant. So how do we heal a codependent
Yeah.
relationship?
Well, I think the first thing is looking at that over functioning pattern and doing less. Because if you're going to do less in the relationship, and with a narcissist, that may be, I'm not going to stay in the room and listen to them gaslight me. I may call a girlfriend, or I may end up like leaving the room a lot because I don't have to stay and take it, versus, oh no, 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 I'm going to make everything all better, and feeling responsible for the entire relationship, versus, what if you're only responsible for yourself?
Yeah.
And you can actually say, you know what, tonight I'm not going to cook dinner. Or maybe I'm not going to do everybody's dish. Maybe I'm just going to do my dish.
Hmm.
Like, find little ways. And that's so hard because that overgiving becomes such a part of our nature, and where we get kudos, let's face it. But that can be such an impactful way. And also starting to befriend yourself, because if my whole thing is I'm going to hyper focus on you, which is what I did it more with my girlfriends. The missing piece was I had no desire to have a connection with myself. Absolutely none. I thought I heard the whole thing, be your own best friend. I'm like, nope, I have no desire, until I realized I did. We can cultivate our own life and then have a relationship, versus putting all of our emotional eggs into one person's basket, which is a setup for failure and unhealthy dependency. We're not going to get anywhere.
Mhm. Absolutely. And what you just said, I was writing down when you were saying it. When we do so much, well, I didn't realize, I was just like, but I'm nice, I do things,
I
I'm
know.
helpful, and
Totally.
the reality is when I'm doing so much, I'm actually trying to control the way people see me. Like, oh, she's the helpful one, not
Right.
the one who takes care of herself. She'll help. I moved 4 people in one summer. I am like a 63-year-old woman. You do not move. That's not
Oh
what I
my
do. But I was like, oh, sure. And then
God.
I was like, die
Yeah.
for a month. Sure. But I
Hmm.
couldn't say no. And so,
Right.
what does the recovery process look like if you are a
Mhm.
codependent and you just want to fix all of these behaviors?
So there's three main areas. The first is redirecting that focus off of other people back onto yourself. That includes befriending yourself, improving self-esteem, actually looking at things you like about yourself, and building that self-trust.
Mhm.
So when you get a feeling, trust it. Like, you know what? There's a reason you don't feel comfortable right now. And instead of dismissing that, that's one leg of the work. The other one is assessing our relationships. And this is hard because sometimes we want to go, well, I'm never giving anybody up. But even if you're not going to let somebody go, the process of looking at how healthy is this relationship? Do you need to set boundaries or practice detachment? Because detachment is the easiest boundary to set, because it's really stepping back, removing yourself. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to get into a confrontation. And then the last bit of it is the child of origin, the family of origin work. And that's where I really think people need a coach, a therapist. I've recommended your group several times because people need a place to talk about those issues. And that piece of the work I don't believe we can do on our own.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we could have, we would have.
Right.
But we haven't.
Right.
So it's like, okay, we need to change these behaviors. And I know that a lot of times codependency behaviors, the people
Mhm.
pleasing, are if we're in an unhealthy relationship, it's almost a coping mechanism. If I
Oh,
want
yeah.
like me, if I want them to kill still like me, I have to do more. I have to be more. I have to do
Right.
this. So, I remember when I used to be in a group with Dr. Romani, and she said to all of us, she was like, you know what? When the, codependency will go away because it's a coping strategy when you're out
Hmm.
of the toxic thing and you could start to do the work to find yourself, right?
Mm,
These were my patterns and I've got to let go of this and I've got to
hmm.
take care of myself versus
Right.
give to everyone. It's hard to do this work when you're, in the actual relationship with, say, a narcissist,
Oh,
because
yeah.
go back into the same patterns that you've
Right.
had. They're not going to
Right.
accept if you did everything in 120%. They're not going to be
Right.
like, oh, sure, you could drop down to 45%.
Right.
Where's my dinner? It's not
Yeah.
out. So it does sometimes take extricating out of the relationship in order to really do the work to heal it once and for all.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I love that you talk about outside support because that is so key, especially with narcissism, because not every therapist and coach understands that dynamic. So
Mhm.
you really need to find somebody who specializes in that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So let's talk about anger because I know that's one of your other
Mm,
things.
yes.
Got the anger groups, and I know it's really powerful. So, can a codependent person learn to be more direct with their anger and resentment, like we
Hmm.
talked about before?
Hmm.
How do they learn that because it's a fearful thing. Most people,
Right.
I don't want to be angry because I'm the next
Right.
and good
Yeah.
girls don't do that, and those sort of recordings from your family that might be in your head. So let's
Yeah.
talk about the anger and resentment. How does a codependent person sort of become stronger and more direct?
So by acknowledging that they even feel it,
Mhm.
and if they're not ready to do that, you can say, I feel stressed. I feel uncomfortable. I mean, it depends on where they're coming from. But eventually you want to own that, you know what, I'm annoyed. I'm irritable. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. Even if you don't tell anyone else. What I used to do when I was first doing this is I'd literally go in the garage and say how pissed off I was because I couldn't say it out loud at all. But I could say it out loud to myself or I could write it. And then I always have people start with the safest people first. Like the next time you're a little bit annoyed with your friend, but you know she's not going to blow up at you, great, practice. Say, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable, or I'm a little annoyed, or even if it isn't about them. In fact, actually, it's probably better to not have it be about them, to just share that you feel a certain way. Because the thing most people don't realize is that anger is a signal that something isn't okay. Someone has either crossed your boundary, done something against your values, and it's got your attention. That's the good news. That's why we want our anger, because it's going to give us that stopgap. What do we need to do right now to take care of ourselves?
Absolutely. When you were talking about going into the garage,
Yeah.
um, I actually, when I've got a client and their anger, whatever their thing is, we're like
Hmm.
1 to 10, like the doctor in the
Yep.
hospital. Smiley
Yep.
face and hat. Where is it? Because often, and I just pulled out my emotional wheel. We pull out, and it's like, I'm angry, but there's like 15 other ways. Are you just annoyed? Are you frustrated? Are you resentful? Like, let's dial that down so that you are managing a 4 because it's just resentment versus a 10, which is off the chart. And it's so much harder to come back. So, kind of
Right.
leveling yourself off and going, okay, well, that could have been absolutely a 10, but this one was a
Hmm.
4. And then you're like,
Yeah.
I can handle 4 so much better
Oh,
because
yeah.
this versus the moon of the worst anger and rage, it almost feels like you can't get past it.
Well, yeah. And you can't, people aren't going to be able to control their anger at a 10, but at a 4, it's so much easier. And what I find with people who say they're a 10 all the time, because I've had clients say that, it's not just today, it's the weeks, the months, the years of resentment and unset boundaries that tend to create that environment within themselves. So they have to realize that their 10 is got a history that we need to unpack. And usually people are like, oh, that makes so much sense because their partner's saying, why are you losing it over the dishes? It's not about the dishes. It's about fairness. It's about overworking. It's about saying yes when you mean no, all that stuff that leads us to that present moment of being a 10.
Absolutely. And then that's what people, if they can sort of dissect that it isn't about the dishwasher or
Right,
washing the
right.
dishes, that there's just so much resentment. It's almost like this, underlying wave that just
Yeah,
grows and grows. And I always describe it as it's sinking you in the quicksand, right? The more
yeah,
you have,
right,
the harder your feet are stuck in the quicksand. It's hard to get out, right? You still might
right,
not get a 10, but that resentment has been festering for 10 years of your marriage,
right,
right? And
right,
so if we learn to speak up when we don't want to do the dishes, or we ask for someone to
right.
be supportive, and that you do the dishes, I made dinner, right? And you get in
Hmm.
a place where you can feel safe and not attacked. Because if
Right.
someone's a narcissist and they've been doing the dishes, and I'm sorry, we're going,
Hmm.
but it worked.
Hmm.
You've been doing the dishes, and then you say, could you do them? And you're
Right,
met a rage. How dare you?
right,
You
right.
lazy. I worked all day. How could you not? Right. And so then you acquiesce, do the dishes,
Hmm.
more resentment, right? So it's
Yeah.
sooner, and putting these boundaries on people way earlier in the relationship, so you can
Hmm.
see, are they going to accept some of the responsibility for our house and our life,
Right,
right? And that's
right.
the problem most victims just don't do.
Yeah.
So
Well, and sometimes there's a caveat around that. If, say, you've always done the dishes, right? I mean, you could go in there and own it and say, I realize I've been not asking for help and make it about you. And I'd really like to change this behavior in me because the narcissist doesn't want to be tagged, right? But that can be an easier way to see if you can get some buy-in because it's about your lesson and they want you to be the problem. So that kind of feeds into, oh, you want to change for you? I'm not being tagged the
the bad guy.
a-hole. Yeah. So sometimes owning that part in our pattern, and I think for codependence in general, we need to do that because if we're going to suddenly give 50%, the other person is going to be like, what are you doing? And we may need to go back and say, I realize I've overfunctioned here for many years and I'm wiped out and I'm going to try something new. I hope you can support me. And then their response is going to tell you everything. Because if they say, oh, no way, Jose, the relationship's going to be pretty limited.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the moment where we test their boundaries, where we see
Yep.
the true colors. And for most
Yeah.
people, they stay and they stay and hope it will get better, or the resentment just keeps building
Right.
until the narcissist has an affair and dumps you anyway. And you'd be like, I
Yeah,
just worked for 40 years, right? So it's a complicated situation, but you are
it
the
is.
codependent expert, and I'm so glad that you were here. Is there anything that we missed today?
I would just say be gentle with yourself no matter where you are in the process. Because if you're here showing up, you're a lot further along than you're probably giving yourself credit for. Because
Mhm.
sometimes we have that yardstick that is just not fair.
Yeah, no, no. And you have some codependent things that we can discuss.
I
So
do.
tell my audience, first, how they can find you. And I know you'll
Mhm.
tell what things are, but all of that stuff.
Yeah. So my website is counselingrecovery.com. My channel is Michelle Farris with Relationships at Work. I have some free guides on codependency. I have a new guide that's probably going to be out in the next few days. And that's about healing codependent relationships. I have my course, which is healing codependency. That definitely came from what I saw lacking in my own recovery many years ago. So that's a bigger course for people who really are serious and wanting to dive in. But I just want to give people hope. You can do this work, and it doesn't have to take years to get relief. You just have to find the right people to support you and the right tools because this is not something to do in isolation.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of it is self-love, and
Yeah,
it's just saying, I don't know how to be my best friend, but I'm gonna try.
right.
What would I tell my best friend who's doing 120% in the
Yes.
house?
Yes.
how can I dial that down? And I love the examples of how to talk to someone by putting it
Mm,
like, hey, I've noticed I've been doing this, not to blame them, because again,
right,
you get a really bad reaction if you talk
right.
to a narcissist here, it's not going to go well, but it's worth trying to take the load on yourself and going, hey, I'm going to try this and you can support me.
Yeah.
I would go one step further to add my friend's magic words and go, I trust that you'll support me through this. So I trust,
Love that.
and it deflects any sort of,
Right.
hair going up on the back of their neck because we trusted them.
Right. And they want to be trusted. So that might enroll them to say, oh, wow, I'm already being complimented.
Exactly, exactly. Nothing like a compliment to a narc. So thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I'm
Oh, thank you.
have you back on the show. And everybody, I'm going to put her information down below. We'll have her website, her YouTube channel, and all of the great resources you'll be able to find when you get to those. So thank you for being here. I hope you guys found that helpful. She's really a very smart woman, and I'm going to put those links down below to, look at her codependency recovery program and course, and all of the other free things that she's got on her website. She also has a YouTube channel, and she's got some really helpful information. So follow her. You can find all her social on there as well. And I will see you again next time. This is Tracy Malone from NarcissistAbuseSupport.com. If you haven't been to my website, why not? Do you not want to heal? Do you not want to understand if you're actually with a narcissist? That's what my site is going to teach you. So NarcissistAbuseSupport.com. And oh yeah, did you subscribe to my channel? I sure appreciate it. And I'll see you guys soon.